Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Jordan and thank you so much for clicking on one of my bookish videos. Today I am filming my August wrap up and September TBR video, which I'm so excited about. August was a good reading month for me. I read some amazing books, some new favorites in a bunch of different genres. I didn't read as much as I normally do, but I'm quite okay with that because all of the books I read I've really enjoyed. If you are interested in seeing me talk about the 13 books that I read in August and what's on my September TBR, then keep on watching. Okay, so in August I read 13 books total and 3 of those were audiobooks, which I'm quite happy about. All in all, it was a good reading month. I feel like 13 is a bit on the lower side for me, but honestly, I've just been reading when I have the time. And yeah, let's go through each of the books I read in August. I was really lucky to read some highly anticipated early copies of books in August, and the first book I started out on is insane. I even have this in my hands, and that is Good Spirits by B.K. Borison. This was gifted to me by Avon Books, so thank you so much to them. B.K. Borison is honestly one of my favorite romance authors. I just think that she does contemporary romance so well. Her writing like scratches an itch in my brain. I am not normally one for a holiday romance. As you can see, this is very much holiday romance inspired. It is about this girl named Harriet, and then she is visited by Nolan, who is the ghost of like Christmas or holiday past. I absolutely loved this, even reading it in August, and it's like a holiday romance. I just had the best time reading it. It is classic B.K. Borison writing. I was crying, I was tearing up, and just getting my heartstrings tugged on constantly throughout this book with how emotional it is. I really related to Harriet's character. She's someone who has really found herself in like an isolated place because of her issues with her family, just wanting to find her own path in the world and do what makes her happy. And Nolan visits her and they think that she has made these mistakes and done bad things that they need to fix, but it turns out that she really is there to help Nolan move on from his past, so it's kind of a twist on his role. I just loved it. Like, you need to add this to your TBR if you like B.K. Borison's writing, if you like contemporary romance, even if you don't like holiday romances, please put this on your list. I gave this 4.5 stars, but I think it's going to end up being 5 stars for me. Next, I picked up a new release in August, and that was Immortal Consequences by Ivy Marie. This is by a debut author, and she absolutely killed it with this book. This is a dark academia young adult fantasy, and it is set in the afterlife. It's following these 6 main characters who go to Blackwood Academy, which is like a school in the afterlife, and every year there's a group of people chosen to participate in this competition where they're fighting to win and either choose to become part of the elite academics, like professors at the academy, or they can decide to become part of the forgotten and move on, forget their past memories from their past life. Everything about this was so good. It's perfect for the fall if you want a fantasy book. I loved each of the 6 main characters and their point of views so much. There was some good romance and just amazing relationships between each of the characters. I thought the concept of this being set in the afterlife and the focus on grief and loss was amazing. So I gave this 4.5 stars. Next, I listened to one of my favorite books of the month, and that was Flirting Lessons by Jasmine Guillory. I listened to this one on audiobook and I absolutely loved it. I loved the book, but this was one of the books that I feel like listening to the audiobook really elevated my experience. I just loved both of the narrators for Taylor and Avery. So this is following 2 main characters. It's a sapphic romance, and Avery is someone who recently broke up with her longtime boyfriend. She wants to try to learn how to flirt, how to date. She really only ever dated this one boyfriend, and she's kind of at a point in her life where in her 30s she's trying to find herself again, and she meets Taylor in one of the first scenes. Taylor is this very just outgoing outgoing, flirty, social creature, and the two of them agree that Taylor will teach Avery how to flirt throughout the summer so that Avery can learn how to basically date and go off and try to figure out who she wants to be with. And obviously, they fall in love with each other throughout their flirting lessons. It just was perfect. It was funny. I really related to Avery's character, just trying to figure out what she wants and feeling very awkward in herself and unable to like read signs from other people if they actually are into her or not. I think that Avery's character is very relatable to a lot of people, and I loved the audiobook. So I gave this 4.5 stars. Next, I read another romance, and that was the Build a Boyfriend Project by Mason Deaver. This was gifted to me by Avon Books, so thank you very much to them. This is following Eli and Peter, and kind of similar to Flirting Lessons. Eli is someone who is fresh off of a breakup with his ex-boyfriend and has kind of been trying to figure out if he wants to start dating other people again. And when he finally decides to go on a first date, he meets Peter, and Peter is someone who never dated someone before, doesn't know how to do dating and being in a relationship, and they have a terrible, horrible first date where Eli almost swears Peter off, but then he figures out that it can not only be good for Eli's career because he's a journalist to try and write an article about building a boyfriend and building a partner and teaching them how to date, but also he feels bad for Peter and he wants to help Peter out. And so they basically start this like fake dating situation. It was a great queer romance. It has trans representation. I definitely want to read more of this author's books in the future. So I gave this also a 4 stars. Next, I picked up a dark gothic fantasy debut, and that was House of the Beast by Michelle Wong. This was gifted to me by Harper Voyager, so thank you very much to them. I really enjoyed this book. Basically, it follows Alma, who was born out of wedlock, and the very beginning of the book, her birth father, who is Lord of the House of the Beast, which is one of the houses of the old gods, comes to take her from her mother and raise her to basically be like a prodigy in the House of the Beast. She agrees to go. She's trying to save her mother, grows up essentially in this really vicious and brutal household that is trained to serve the beast, which is one of the old gods. And throughout the book, Alma has this relationship and like connection with the beast. So you have a bit of a romance in it, but honestly, I just really liked the whole gothic fantasy vibes. It felt very dark and sometimes gory, but I kind of enjoyed that. It's a bit different than like your typical romantasy, and I gave this 4 stars. I thought it was a really great debut novel. Next, I read one of my favorite romance books of the month, and honestly, I think of the year, and that is Between Friends and Lovers. This book I have seen for such a long time, and I'm beating myself for not picking it up earlier because I absolutely love this. So this follows Jo, and Jo is a doctor. She left her career in medicine, kind of put it on pause when she realized that she just did not enjoy her job as much as she should for how strenuous and intense it was, and became this influencer. And in this book, at the very beginning, you find out that her and Ezra, who is her guy best friend, she's been in love with him for the entirety of their friendship. At the very beginning, she essentially has her last straw with him when he's in another relationship, and she decides that she needs to move on from him. She's done with the way that he has kind of led her on and pushed her off. She ends up meeting and going on a date with Mal at that very first party. They definitely have feelings for each other very quickly, but it is slow burn because Jo is going through so much in her personal life and just trying to work through moving on from Ezra. I loved Jo's character so much. I related to her so much. I really related to her fear of being with someone, of not being independent and living her own life and opening herself up to somebody else in a way that she never has before. This this was a heavy hitter and I loved it. I think I gave it 4.5 stars, but the more I think about it, this is probably a 5 stars for me. All right, now we have all of the fantasy books that I read this month, which were quite a lot, and I loved all of them. First, I read The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson. So I saw a few friends rave about this book, and even though it's a big, beefy one, I really just wanted to pick it up and thought it would be perfect to get me into fantasy for the fall, and it did exactly that. This is an epic fantasy, adult fantasy book. It has a bit of a romance, so there's a little bit of a romantasy, which I really enjoyed. It's set in this empire, and there is this emperor, and every 25 years a new emperor is chosen through this trial and competition, and the main character Nima is a high scholar to the emperor, and she is responsible in this book for figuring out what happened to one of the contenders when she is murdered on the eve of the competition starting. And somehow Nima gets pulled into this competition. There's a very big underlying mystery throughout this entire book of figuring out who the emperor actually is, which I really loved the mystery subplot in this book. I think it's so fun in a fantasy. I loved the epic fantasy world. It's set in a world where there's these 8 old gods. They all are represented by different animals. So the raven, the bull, the fox. I really loved Nima's character and her relationship with Cain. It was so good and so heartbreaking, and the cliffhanger of this book made me need the second book immediately. So I am probably giving this 5 stars. Next, I read a recent new release, and that is Wild Reverence by Rebecca Ross. I actually read The Raven Scholar, Wild Reverence, and the Jasad Heir in a recent reading blog, so I will link that above so you can see all of my thoughts while reading them. I ended up really loving this book. I have seen only good reviews about it, and so I went in with high expectations, and I will say in the first 25% I was a little bit thrown off by not really feeling a huge connection to the romance, and this is definitely a romantasy, so I wasn't really sure how I would feel about the rest of the book, but at the 30% it really picked up for me. I really started enjoying the plot, and that is when Matilda and Vincent, the two main characters, meet in person and really start forming an actual bond beyond their dreams. The romance took off from there, for me at least, and I really enjoyed the rest of the book. This is set in the Divine Rivals world, but is following Matilda, who is a goddess, and Vincent, who is a mortal lord. The two of them meet each other in their dreams when they're younger. It turns out that they were destined to find each other in real life later on in life, 10 years later, and that is where this book basically picks up at the 25-30% mark. It is heartbreaking. Rebecca Ross's writing was so beautiful. The last 20% had me crying so hard and honestly bumping up my rating. I really loved it. I gave this a 4.5 stars. Next, I read The Jasad Heir by Sarah Hashim. This is book number 1 in the Scorched Throne duology, and I really enjoyed this. I listened to most of this book on audio, and I really enjoyed the audiobook. So this is an Egyptian-inspired adult romantasy book. Basically, it follows Sylvia, and Sylvia is the Jasad Heir. So the Jasad kingdom was a kingdom of magic. Her parents, her family were murdered 10 years ago by the other kingdoms because everyone is basically terrified of their magic, or that is what Sylvia thinks. Sylvia survives and has been hiding, masking her magic for the past 10 years. And in this book, Aaron, who is the Nizal heir, which is another kingdom, finds her and discovers her magic and wants her to basically help him to stop this Jasad rebel group and be part of this competition as his contender. The two of them have a connection pretty instantly. There's basically a lot of enemies to lovers, which I loved. A lot of betrayal and a lot of secrets. Sylvia throughout this book is really discovering the truth about the Jasad Empire and kingdom that was hidden from her by her family. And the ending was absolutely crazy. The amount of betrayal that happened had me gasping. I definitely will be be reading the second book very soon, but I really enjoyed reading this one. I think it's perfect for the fall, and I gave it a 4.5 stars. Okay, and lastly, I did a reread of Katabasis by R.F. Kong. I previously read this for the first time, I think in June. I can link that video up here, but my thoughts did not change rereading this. I just loved this book. Like, I feel like this is one that a lot of people have mixed opinions about, but in my opinion, if you are looking for a dark academia, dark fantasy book for the fall or just to get you in the fantasy mood, I think this is the perfect book. I absolutely loved it. I really just related to Alice's character. She is a PhD student, and basically in this book, her and Peter, a fellow student, take a descent into hell to find their missing dead professor. She is trying to save him, and in my opinion, Alice's descent into hell is essentially like a metaphor for her working through her depression and suicidal ideation and just a really low point that she's gotten to in her life, and she is working through all these dark memories and thoughts and trying to find ways to dig herself out of it and get herself out of that hole. That is what this book and Alice's character meant to me, and I just loved R.F. Kong's writing so much in this one. I found so many more quotes my second time around that I absolutely loved. Yeah, she never misses for me, and I'm so happy that I enjoyed this one. I gave it a 4.5 stars. Okay, so those are the 13 books that I read in August. I feel like it just really got me back in the swing of fantasy reading and specifically like craving epic fantasy. So I'm very excited for these next few months of the end of the year. And now let's talk about some of the books on my September TBR. Okay, so for September, I am starting out strong with a book that I've been dying to read, and that is Heat of the Everflame by Penn Cole. I love this series so much. Like, I have so much fun reading it. I think it's such a good romantasy series. It has all the right ingredients, and I am so excited to see where the plot of this book goes, but I'm quite excited. Also, in my fantasy TBR, I am going to be reading Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb. This is part of a huge, like, I think 18 book series. My friend Reese absolutely loves this first trilogy and has been raving about it, and I've been seeing these books for so long and wanted to pick them up, so I'm very excited. I may listen to it on audiobook because I've heard from her that the audiobooks are pretty good. We shall see, but I'm very excited for this one. I am putting this into this video because I have quite literally had this book on my TBR, I think since 2020, which is so embarrassing, but the fact that I haven't gotten rid of it yet just proves that I do want to read it. I'm just terrified by the length. This is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. I know that it's epic fantasy. I believe it has sapphic romance, so I guess a bit of like a romantasy. I have heard such amazing things about this book. It's diversity, it's feminist take, it's high fantasy, epic fantasy world building. I remember that Lori Hernandez raved about this book, I think back during the pandemic, and that's when I picked it up, and I literally have pushed it off solely because of its length, but I am determined to get through it this fall, and specifically hopefully in September, because I just have a feeling that I'm gonna love it, so I need to push myself to do it. Okay, and then two romance books that I'm really excited about reading are People Watching by Hannah Bohm Young. I have my arc of that, which I need to read this week because it comes out next week. So I definitely need to get to that sooner than later. I love Hannah Bohm Young's books. I feel like they're just so wholesome and comforting. I have heard interesting things about People Watching, but I am going in pretty blind and giving it a shot, and we will see what I think. And then I also am going to be reading my arc of Revolve by Bal Cabra. This is the third book in in, I think it's called the Off the Ice series. It's a hockey romance series and it's one of my favorites. I love Bal's writing and her romances so much, and I'm super excited for Revolve. I feel like I just binge and love every single one of her books. All right, a few other books that I really want to get to this month. You've Found Oliver by Dustin Tao. This is the sequel to You've Reached Sam by this author, which I loved when I read it. I think I read it back when it came out, which I think was like closer to the pandemic, and this is a very highly anticipated book. This copy was gifted to me by Penguin Teen, so thank you to them. I'm really excited. I feel like this is going to be very emotional. It comes out in September, so I'm hoping to get to it very soon. Then another book that I've had on my TBR for a while is Writers and Lovers by Lily King. My friend Yasmin absolutely loves Lily King's books so much, and I feel like I'm like the last person on this earth to read this book, but I found it in a little library. I've just heard that it's very beautiful. I literally don't know what it's about, but I've heard that it's beautiful. It's about grief and it has really wonderful writing, and I'm quite excited to read this one. All right, so that is it for this little August wrap up and September TBR video. I hope that something in this video maybe caught your attention that you want to check out, or you agree with me if you've loved any of these books too. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I love filming these wrap-ups. I think they're so fun. It's fun to look back at all the books that I really loved and enjoyed each month. If you want to see more bookish videos from me in the future, especially in September and the fall, because I have some really fun fall content planned, I would love it if you subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!